It's the 2019-2020 school year, which means more than 100,000 public schools will be reopening its doors to welcome kids back from summer break. Staff are welcome back as well for their hard efforts in teaching the younger generation basic life skills like reading, writing, and math. However, public schools are struggling with a lack of funding and shortages in supplies. Public schools are funded largely by federal, state, and local sources. The federal government contributes about 8% to funding U.S. public schools, while state taxes make up the majority of that funding. Local property taxes make up nearly half of those funds. However, this system creates large differences in funding between impoverished and wealthy communities. When the recession hit in 2008, many schools that were heavily dependent on funds from state governments were vulnerable to the effects of the recession. In response to the rapidly declining property values, local courts increased tax mileage rates, which increased state revenues and local revenues from property taxes. Inequality in school spending increased to a great degree during the Great Recession. Fast forwarding a decade later to the 2018-2019 school year, public schools received a total of $97.2 billion in funding from three sources: the state making up 58%, property taxes and other local sources 32%, and the federal government 9%. A major step forward in the right direction has been made since the unfortunate circumstance that swept America, allowing children and teens to broaden their education. We caught up with Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Education Craig Murray and questioned him on the changes the educational system has been through.
I believe that we need more funding in California education. I know that the government's done more in recent years, particularly since the Great Recession, to fund schools in a more sufficient manner. But we still, with rising costs and other obligations that the district has in a society that has increasing costs, it is not sufficient to do what we need to best serve our students.
Shares vary across school districts. Of the 6.2 million K-12 students in California, about 9 out of 10 attend one of the nearly 9,000 regular schools in the 1,026 school districts, while the other 11% of students attend about 1,228 charter schools, which are publicly funded but not subject to some state regulations, which means more than half of public school students are economically disadvantaged, and about a quarter are English learners. By doing this, these English learners, along with native-born citizens, are not given the same opportunities as others to grow and expand their horizons. They are subject to outdated curriculum and equipment that are not bettering their education.
Ensure that every child receives a quality education is not over. Our students deserve better. They deserve fully funded schools with state-of-the-art classrooms to ensure our kids have the skills they need to succeed in a quickly changing world. They deserve the challenges and opportunities to come from taking advanced placement classes that promote academic achievement and extracurricular activities that stimulate creativity and a passion for lifelong learning. And they deserve teachers, aides, administrative staff, and bus drivers who are paid a fair and living wage.
In 2014-2015, total expenses for public elementary and secondary schools in the United States added up to $668 billion, or $13,119 per public school. Student enrolled in the fall. On average, the U.S. spend $12,756 to educate each student. However, expenses vary from state to state. Utah spends the least amount of money per student at $7,638 per pupil. Vermont has the highest expenses in the nation at $20,540 per student, as adjusted for variations in regional costs. Our country's future depends heavily on the quality of schools. Increasing financial support can help K-12 schools implement reforms. These reforms include hiring and keeping excellent teachers and staff, reducing the size of classes, as well as improving the way we teach. Although, over the past decade, we have been doing just the opposite, cutting opportunities from the younger generation. Author Andrea Gaber touches on the topics of reforms and the status of the education system when talking about her book, After the Educational Wars, saying,
must constantly improve the way that they both teach children to meet the challenges of a highly technological global world, but also how to be active citizens in a democracy, something that we often forget, and those things are not mutually exclusive.
Restoring school funding should be an urgent priority. Spending cuts at the state level can have serious consequences. It can force school districts to raise local revenue or scale back educational services. When asked about things that had to be cut back, one maintenance and operations worker of the Natomas Unified School District told us to change in scenery and use of technology and how has it affected the educational system.
How much money is allocated towards the athletic department. A lot of teams, whether it be football, basketball, any sports, or even band, or the arts or drama departments, are stuck having to do a lot of personal fundraisers to help either pull through the seasons and or even attend band tournaments or buy equipment. So that's probably the one that pops to mind.
With all this talk on spending cuts, how is it affecting our schools? Core services that have significant influence on instructional quality and student performance are unavailable to students in low-income schools relative to students in higher-income schools. Technology is also increasingly needed for a better education.
More of a emphasis on making sure that we're reaching out to people that need extra services, and I think that that's when we're underfunded.
The debate over public education is a complicated and long one. We can only hope that through further communication and improving funding, our schools can receive enough money to benefit our students.